There's a place He comes to me. Though I'm blind, He helps me see. Though I see dimly in this place, one day I'll see Him face to face.
This is Kurt Kaikkonen, pastor of Calvary Chapel, Waterford, at your neighborhood church. Today on Face to Face, we'll be in the book of Revelation. So grab your Bibles and let's get started. If you want to hear this complete message in its entirety, go to yourneighborhoodchurch.com, where you can download Your Neighborhood Church app at the App Store.
Okay, and so after this angel describes this beast who was and is not, the second half of that verse says, and those who dwell on the earth will marvel. And those people, we're told, are those whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world. And then again, it says that they will see the beast that was and is not, and yet is. Well, this statement here, this actually reminds me of a couple passages. One of them is found in Ezekiel 28, where the passage actually talks about the king of Tyre. But as it describes the king of Tyre, it describes him as Lucifer before he is fallen. And it talks about him when Lucifer was an anointed cherub on the holy mountain of God, walking in the midst of the fiery stones. And it says, until iniquity was found in him, and he was cast out because of his heart being lifted up. And then it talks about him being destroyed in the sight of all those who saw him. And it says, they will be astonished at him because he had become such a horror. And so to me, that sounds a lot like this description here. And then we find this other passage, and we find it in Isaiah 14, where it explicitly talks about Lucifer's fall and how he bragged, how he would be like the Most High. But then in verse 15, it says, yet you will be brought down to Sheol, to the lowest depths of the pit. Those who see you will gaze at you and consider you, saying, this is the man who made the whole world tremble, who shook kingdoms and made the world as a wilderness and destroyed cities. And so these here are those people that actually followed the beast. And these are the ones whose names are not written in the book of life. And when the Antichrist is thrown down, they will marvel, because at that time, he won't seem like much. And so now the angel, he says he's going to try to give us a little wisdom. And he says, here is the mind which has wisdom. And it says, the 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. Okay, now there's 2 thoughts here. And the first thought is that the harlot, that this false religious system, that it's located in Rome, because Rome has always been known as the city built on 7 hills. And right here, there's a lot of people who will look at that description, that it could be Rome, who will say that this harlot, the great whore here, this one world, wide religion system over the world, they'll say, well, this is the Catholic Church. But I don't believe that's exactly what that means. And to be fair, if it is the Roman Catholic Church, it's not the Roman Catholic Church that we have today. And that's because there are Christians in the Roman Catholic Church. And those Christians that are in the Roman Catholic Church, they're going to be raptured alongside with us, because all true believers in Jesus Christ and all of us who have been born again, we will be gone in the rapture and we won't be here. And this false church, even though it may have Roman roots, it's not going to only be made up of the leftover Catholic Church, but it's going to be made up of all the false churches. So this false church is not limited to just one church, because everybody will belong to this one world false religious system in the end times. And so my thoughts are more like, this is what's described when you see those coexist bumper stickers, you know, where it's made up of all the religion that is not true Christianity. Or maybe it looks more like the World Council of Churches, which would include the liberal Protestant churches and also the Muslims and their mosques, and in embracing all the false religions. But we do know that this false church will have intimate relations with all the kings of the earth, and because we've already read that, and how all these nations of the world have used her to increase their power and decrease their wealth, and that she is carried on the back of the Antichrist. And some people, when you say that and you imply that it's Rome and it's a Catholic Church, they'll come back and they'll say, well, this isn't Rome. And they'll point out, they'll say, it says 7 mountains here. Rome wasn't built on 7 mountains. It was built on 7 hills. And that's true. And they're right. But if you read down in chapter 17 a little further, when you get down to verse 18, you'll read where it says, that woman that you saw is the great city which reigns over the kings of the earth. And that word reigns here is in the present tense. So what that's saying and what that means, it's the reigning city that is reigning presently in John's day. And the reigning city of John's day was the city of Rome. And so that also means that this false church, this harlot in the last days, will also be in the city of Rome. And that is where the harlot does come from. And again, I'll say, if this is the Roman Catholic Church, it is not the Roman Catholic Church of today. It will be a post-rapture Catholic Church alongside with all the other false churches. And there's always been a Babylonian false church all through history, all since Nimrod and Babel. There's always been a church that has had this mother-child worship and using all the same kind of garments and the same types of symbols and beliefs. They just use other names. You find them in all the cultures. You find them in Rome, with Venus and Cupid and all these different names. And it's always been opposed to the true God, and it's always killed his saints. And some of the worst things that have ever been done to true Christians have been done by the false church. And I don't know if any of you have read this, but if you've ever read the Fox's Book of Martyrs, you'll read about 288 Christians that were burned at the stake under Queen Mary, who ruled over England. And this one actually did happen under the rule of the Roman Catholic Church. And all those people, they died in just a short 3-year period, because that was from 1555 to 1558. And nowadays, when we look at our world, we see these kind of murders happening more frequently to Christians throughout our world. You'll see them a lot happening, and you hear of a lot of it happening now in Africa, because the false church has always been the enemy of the true church of Jesus Christ. And I would say that this also includes liberal Protestant churches who, instead of trying to conform their lives to Jesus Christ, they try to conform the church into the image of the world and to conform to their values. All right. So now, after we've been told about these 7 mountains, we're told also about these 7 kings. And then here it says, 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other has not yet come. And so those 5 kings that have fallen, well, those are 5 kingdoms that have already passed through the different periods of history. And so those would be the kingdoms of Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, and Greece, because all those world empires have already passed by John's day. And the 6th one, which is the one is, well, that would be Rome, which is the current one that's going on during John's day. And then it says that the other has not yet come. And this is talking about the Antichrist, and with him being over the 7th kingdom. And this is still while the Antichrist is still ruling with the other 10 horns, the 10 kings that come out of Europe. And it says that this is only for a short time, because we know that it lasts for less than the 7 years of tribulation. And then it talks about this last king. And now it's actually calling him the beast. And it uses the same title, the beast that was and is not. And it tells us that he is the 8th king and that he also was the 7th. And then again, it tells us he's the one that's going to perdition. So he's the one that's going to hell. And to understand these verses in 10 and 11, you kind of have to look and you have to understand that verse in verse 12. Because in verse 12, it tells us that these 10 horns, these 10 kings of Europe, they have only been given authority for 1 hour. And it says they're all of one mind to give their authority to the Antichrist. All right, so now this is how this all looks to me. That the Antichrist, during his early days and in the very beginning of the 7 years of tribulation, he carries this united, universal false church system called the harlot. And through that system, he makes all these allies with all the nations of the world, and with all these 10 kings, with his kingdom of peace. So that's when the Antichrist is the seventh king. And that he rules over these 10 kings, which are the 10 united nations of Europe, that revived Roman Empire. But somewhere in the middle of the Antichrist's reign, and it's probably when he is mortally wounded and healed, he becomes a different man. And now he is popular with all the people. And when he's healed from that mortal wound, and now he becomes what is called that blasphemous man. And he establishes himself as God. And this false church that he's been carrying, the harlot, he has no need for her anymore. And all these 10 kings, that they're in agreement with him. And so they give the Antichrist all of their authority, all the authority of the whole world. And then together, they destroy the false church, the harlot. Because this is when I believe the Antichrist image is put into the temple. And so now there's no more middleman. There's no one taking away any of the glory from the worship of Satan. And they will only worship Satan through the Antichrist directly. Because in the end, the Antichrist, he will not tolerate any worship than the worship of himself. And there's something else you need to see here, that this judgment of the false church is not just from the mind of these 10 kings. Because it says there in verse 17, it says, "For God has put it in their hearts to fulfill his purpose, for them to be of one mind and to give their kingdom to the beast." So all of this here is being done under God's direction. And so now under the beast, the whole world will get what it's always desired. It'll get this godless religion under a godless ruler, and that's what the world has been demanding for forever. And so that's this week. This is chapter 17, where we've seen the fall of religious Babylon. Next week, we're going to go through chapter 18, and then we're going to see the fall of commercial Babylon. All right, so now we're done with our study here. And this is a good place for all of us to examine ourselves, to see if we've been trusting in a religious system, be it Roman Catholicism or liberal Protestantism.
You've been listening to Face to Face. Face to Face on this radio station has been provided by Your Neighborhood Church. If you want to help support Face to Face and put this program on other stations just like yours, you can contact us at yourneighborhoodchurch.com or write Your Neighborhood Church, P.O. Box 500, Romeo, Michigan 48065.
There's a place he comes to me. Though I'm blind, he helps me see. Though I see dimly in this place, one day I'll see him face to face.
Tune in again tomorrow at this same time as we continue to go through the Bible.